So we have Miss Aleisha Olatunde here with us today. And
Hold on, is it Olatunde?
Did I say it right?
It's Olatunde.
Olatunde. I'm so sorry.
You all right?
I've been saying your name like that this whole time, and I just said it like I just knew exactly how.
Yeah, you said it with confidence. Okay.
Okay, hard confidence.
Right.
That's why I'm like, wait.
Right. Well, we're so glad to have her here joining with us. As you guys know from our previous show last week, we started getting into the conversation about sex. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important because it's not talked about enough, especially when it comes to the church. Oh, yeah. So we want to talk about as many topics as we possibly can to cover this. And today we're going to specifically talk about sexual trauma and how it's affected in marriage.
Yes.
So you want to give us a little background about you, Miss Aleisha, and what you
do? Yes, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. I love when I get to talk to especially my church folks.
Yes.
I actually have an undergraduate degree in marketing. And then God was like, hey, that's actually not where I want you. I'm going to go ahead and shift you over. I want you to work with my people in sex. And I said, why would I do that? That doesn't make sense in my brain. And so I got my master's during the pandemic. Don't recommend that. And so I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling. And so I am working towards actually becoming certified through ASECT, which is the governing body for sex therapists and counselors and all of that. My passion is I want to help everybody, right? But my passion is to really go into our churches and really help to break down the false kind of things that have been floating around. Because data even shows the more that we talk about this, especially with our children, the healthier that we become.
Yeah.
So I just want to give space for people to learn and to grow and ask hard questions and just for us to be healthy, because that's the only way that our marriages can thrive. That's the only way we as parents can then disciple our children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
What does that search say? I just realized the top part of that. What does that say?
Sex education.
Okay. I need me one of those.
I got one of my favorite sexologists. This is her merchandise. Her name is Goody Howard. And so it's part of my goodie gear.
We need to talk to her too.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah. You talking about you need one of them shirts. I would be terrified to wear that shirt in public.
She be the one on her, please, like, Mom, close your ears. Dad, close your ears.
Because I said it last week. I'm still a virgin with 2 kids. I'm still a virgin.
So you're one of the people that I want to talk to because that's not possible.
Right. I was saying the Lord just be working miracles. He do.
Right.
Well, I know I have some questions that I want to.
We both got some questions.
Yeah, that I want to definitely ask, but I know with me, like I just said, like Twee said, I am very uncomfortable with talking about sex and even saying the word sex and people knowing that I have had sex because I have children. So like, do you have any advice for women that feel like, I know this is like probably off topic, but I just wanted to just ask that real quick. Do you have any advice for women that feel like me that are uncomfortable? Like it's not that I'm like, when I'm with my husband, I'm not uncomfortable, but just the outwardly knowing that I've had sex, it makes me very, very, very uncomfortable. So do you have any advice?
So a couple quick things. One, investigating within yourself, where did the shame come from?
Church.
Right? and purity culture and all of these things, because what ultimately ends up happening is we hold purity, one, talking about the physical act, when purity is so much more than that.
Yeah.
But also the badge of honor that is then affixed to, oh, I'm abstaining and I'm abstaining. And so then you are no longer abstaining. And it's like, well, where does my identity affix to now?
Yeah.
So really investigating that part of yourself. I do have worked with women who, there's a brilliant, now it's very dense. I'm gonna just put that out there. But there's a brilliant woman named Emily Nagasaki, and she has a book called Come As You Are. And so it even starts with people don't even know about their own bodies.
Right.
Right. And now let me just parenthetically insert, I'm not telling you to masturbate. I'm not telling, don't you go nowhere and say Aleisha said that. I didn't tell you that. But oftentimes what I do also see associated with I'm uncomfortable talking about it, it's also being uncomfortable in their physical body. And so the good thing about Come As You Are is like there's a workbook that's associated with it. And so it really helps you to grow comfortable in just you. And then that from that internal place, then you can be more comfortable in having that conversation and the freedom that you have, in your relationship. But again, even with your children and being able to have those conversations with them. But first it starts with internal. Like that's my number one thing. Where did it come from? And now that you know where it came from, are you willing to do the work in order to take the next steps for you to be comfortable within yourself first? And then you can share that with other people.
So that just really makes me think about how it seems like, and you can verify this, that a lot of sexual trauma really starts in the household, like in childhood.
Yeah.
And what kids experience, again, both male and female. I know
Absolutely.
female gets talked about a lot, but males experience it too. So I'm just curious, is that where you see it more happening in childhood?
Yeah, and we can define childhood in a variety of ways, right? So like whether we're talking about infants, which we hate to see, or whether we're talking about teenagers, or I mean, dare I say, even though you were in college, you're an adult like that, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
right. So it affects everybody. When you're looking at, so there's an organization called RAINN, which is Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. They're the largest anti-sexual violence organization. And so when you look at the data that they present, every 68 seconds, there's an American that is sexually assaulted.
Wow.
One of every 6 women are a victim of attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. And then about 3% of men, so about 1 in 33, have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And what has been encouraging to me is within these last couple of years is being highlighted of what is actually happening to our boys.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, it's seen as a badge of honor for so and so out. Oh, so and so in bags. So it's, you know what I mean? Like it's such grotesque language that's used.
Yeah.
And I remember watching a podcast, and this guy was like, "Well, now that you say that, like, I was like 9, and this 18-year-old girl, and it's like, oh, like I'm actually a victim of this, and we don't even realize it."
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's been very encouraging to me to hear more of a spotlight to be put on what is actually happening to our boys.
Yeah.
So so I know I talked about like men and women, right? So if we're breaking it down to boys and girls, 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 20 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse or assault. And
not to cut you off,
No,
but that
go
just
ahead.
made me think about, I don't know how me and my husband ended up looking at this, if there was some on the news or something. But there's several states where a child can get married at 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, what kind
That
of
was-
foolery?
As long as their parents sign off.
For it. Yep. Yep. And I think that I think it is so sick.
Yeah.
I think that it's sick. And I don't want to judge people. I don't, because I ain't the judge.
Yeah.
But it's still sick.
Yeah.
It's
Because what is this grown person?
What are you getting out of this marrying a 10, 11, 12-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah.
We were looking at it was a Hollywood thing that just came up on Facebook showing all these couples that were married super young to a child. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Elvis Presley and Priscilla Presley were one. Yeah. Yeah. It's my grandmother. She married my grandfather when she was 16.
Mm.
And my great grandfather had to sign off for her to get married.
Wow.
So I couldn't imagine being 16, 17, being married, still trying to finish school, have a child. Boy, when I hit 30 and I was all of those things, I was like, this is too much. I just don't wanna. But I couldn't imagine, because I know what my mindset was when I was that age. Even as young as 10, I know what my mindset was at that age. And the fact that you have these older gentlemen or these men looking at these children, like my oldest daughter is 8.
Yeah.
And there are people that look at an 8-year-old's body and desire and feel like, oh, we love each other. No, you're
sick.
Yeah. I mean, because you have to remember, so right, the brain does not fully develop until about 25.
Yeah.
Right. And so the hard thing oftentimes, especially when we're talking about sexual trauma, is this adult is looking at this kid. What happened to them? And that's the hard part, to conceptualize what happened to them.
Yeah.
In order for them to have this thought process, think that this is okay. Right? Like, it's just like, dang, that's gross.
Right.
But can we get curious? That doesn't make the behavior right.
Right.
But can we get curious about
the
what's
cycle
actually happening?
Yeah.
Exactly. Because when you're talking about the mental health challenges that then come from this, right? Because they're 4 times more likely to develop drug abuse. They are 4 times more likely to experience PTSD as adults. 3 times more likely to have major depressive episodes. And how are we then coping with these things?
Right.
Right? Are we repeating the cycle? Are we abusing drugs? What then happens? And then we're going on undiagnosed. We're just thinking, oh, well, this is just what happened to me, and so I'm going to push it under the rug, and it's not affecting me. Well, no, it absolutely is.
Yeah. Me and my husband were talking about this as well, because I personally was sexually abused when I was younger by a family member. And, I was just like, man, it's just so many ways where I can see how God kept me. And that's not to say that he can't keep anybody else, because he still does. But I just have to look at it personally for me and what could have happened, what could have transpired, where I could be, because I realized some of those things that you mentioned that I could have suffered for.
Yeah.
And I remember times in those moments where I literally felt numb, where I felt like it was almost like a shield, where he was able to protect me or keep me from, like a veil, And so I'm grateful for, his protection over me, even still in the midst of that. And that's hard for people to get past too. It's thinking about the fact that, even though that happened to me, he still protected me even through that. He still gave me the ability to forgive that person, like, immediately. And for a long time, my friends and family could not understand how, because I had to be around this person a lot.
Yeah. And me being one of those friends, like, I feel like I try to look from all perspectives, but I really was like, but why is he still here?
Yeah.
Like, that would be the question. And then when she's like, well, I forgave him, and would say hi to him, and I would be like, and why are you saying, why are you giving him hugs? Like, why are you? Ugh.
And honestly, that is not the norm. But when we're talking about the intersection of sexual trauma and faith, you are a testament to that.
Right.
But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't experience that.
Right.
Um, and not right, wrong, or indifferent, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
that has been your experience, and you were able to get to a point where you could do that. And for some people, that doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
I also want to make sure that we acknowledge them. There is nothing wrong with the fact that you did not um, get to that point, right?
Right.
Or that you don't have a desire to
Yeah.
either,
Right.
right? Because forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation,
Right.
Right.
right? So,
Well, and to that point, if you can kind of speak to, um, you know, from for me,
mhm.
as much as I'm talking about myself, but I can share that, my husband had a hard time. And sometimes it still kind of
Mhm.
bothers him more than me.
Mhm.
And so, that's one of the reasons too that I wanted to have this discussion, because I think it's important for a spouse to be able to recognize some of
Yeah.
those triggers
Yeah.
and be able to comfortably talk about it with them. Um, because while we would like to say in a perfect world, yeah, your spouse is going to tell you everything,
Mhm.
they're going to be fully transparent or whatever, it just may not be something up front that they want to talk about, because it might be still hard for them. It may still be triggering. They still kind of erase it from their mind.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of speak to that too.
Yeah. So when you're talking about that's kind of layered, right? So one, we're talking about being able to know what the triggers are.
Yeah.
And sometimes, right? So our spouses are the closest people to us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, you're being very combative. And it's just like, you're not even connecting the thing, right? And so maybe you finally do the work and you figure out what the trigger is attached to. Okay, so maybe one person or the other raised their voice. And so, the trigger is just like, well, I don't, something happens to me when you start raising your voice. And it's just like, well, I just talk loud.
Yeah.
Well, right? And so then first being able to identify the trigger, and even what you guys were talking about earlier, um or no, sorry, on the episode I was watching talking about being in safe space, I was like,
Yeah.
no, we didn't talk about that today. The vulnerability that comes with that, with being seen and allowing our spouse to be able to speak to those parts of us. Babe, this is what I'm observing. I do you know, right? Or seeking out help,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be collectively or together, to identify the trigger. That's first. When the trigger has then been identified, being vulnerable and open enough when our spouse sees that you're starting to escalate, allowing them, whether it's a touch, whether it's whatever the thing is, where it can bring that sense of safety to you so that it can bring you back down.
Yeah.
Um, when we're talking about triggers, right? So it can be the raised voice, it could be a smell, it could be a physical sensation. So we even have to be careful about touch. I mean, I have worked with people who there are certain things sexually that they cannot do because it then triggers them. So they could be having a pleasurable experience with their spouse,
Yeah.
and an act, whether it can be something as simple as like you kissed my ear and it
Right.
sends them,
Yeah.
and so then the moment is gone, and it can be very difficult for the spouse, the supporting spouse, because then, well, now you're rejecting me, and so
Yeah.
now the thing has escalated way beyond where we even are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so recognizing those things, first, again, getting the help. Like
Right.
sometimes we can't, we not even sometimes we cannot, we need Jesus and therapy,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Not in the sentence, right? Like it's high time that we get out of that mind space. um as a supportive spouse, one, you have to be able to listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not take on the anger and all of the thing, right? So it's hard because, like, dang, somebody hurt my spouse,
Right.
But that hurt doesn't belong to you. Does that make sense? Right. So understanding, being that listening space, and as you mentioned, that's hard to sometimes do. But if that's going to be a part of their healing journey, we have to learn how to regulate our own emotions and realize, like, I'm walking with you from where you are at this point, not from where you started.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once you've identified the triggers, now we're having the conversations. As a supporting person, you can educate yourself. What are the things that happen to people who have experienced sexual trauma? Because maybe there are additional triggers that they don't know about. And because now that's how you are then walking alongside with them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and not being like, oh, I read this, I think this is what's happening to you, right? Like, doing the research so you can hold that within yourself. And then that is one of the things that can help you regulate your emotions so that you're not taking it personally. You're not looking at it as rejection.
Right.
In those moments, like the example I gave, well, maybe something is triggered when you're actually in an intimate act, whether that's sexually or not, respecting the boundaries that are put in place.
So let's talk about something real quick. You just said, it made me think about, how can you, what's a good way to support your spouse in that moment? If you all are in the middle of intercourse, you know, some type of pleasurable act, and you notice that your spouse is triggered in some way, like, what's the best way? Because it's really a moment of having to stop and think so that you don't get that rejection.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest for someone who is supporting their spouse? How can they support them, like, right there in that moment?
So it's tough because it's individualized, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm, because I don't, that's the hard thing about sexual trauma, right? So if I could try to make it general, like if you guys have had the conversations, or have identified the triggers, maybe having something simple as like a safe word, that just brings us both on even playing field, right?
Idea.
So like if it's the person who was the victim, right? And I hate using the word victim or survivor, you know what I mean? But for the purposes of this conversation, if you are the person who is triggered, like as soon as the trigger happens, saying the safe word, because that orients them.
Yeah.
Or even, and I think when we're talking about the support, we have to remember that the person who is doing a lot of the heavy lifting is the person who experienced the thing. And so there's responsibility on both ends because we are in covenant, but a lot of the heavy lift, and again, when we're talking about being vulnerable, has to be from the person, because we don't want you to go, right? So we talk about in therapeutic spaces, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We don't want you to fawn, which means like you become the people pleaser, your identity, like you're shifting it, or like becoming codependent. We don't want you to do that, because then you're just now taking a maladaptive behavior and moving it to something else, right? So the safe word, if I can think of just like high level, I think that would be something good that both people can have access to, but really for the person who has experienced the trigger to be able to do it in the moment so that the other person doesn't feel the rejection, but also tunes them in. I'm no longer in a pleasurable state, and something is happening to me.
Yeah.
That's deep.
It is.
That's deep.
It is.
Because you don't, those that haven't experienced a trauma like that, like we're not thinking, this isn't pleasurable because, of an attack on my person.
Yeah.
So it's, my way of, looking at it differently, especially, for my friend. So, yeah. Oop, I ain't crying.
Let the tears flow. You can't say that in front of a therapist.
Lord, Lord, because they got real Jesus.
Yeah.
Lord. They got Jesus.
Because no one deserves that,
No.
especially as a child,
Yeah.
right? And so to then what I would, even in this moment, I'm gonna hit this and then we're gonna keep moving. What I would challenge you though is you see her response and you see how she has moved through.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't appear, and again, I ain't had you in the therapeutic space, but it doesn't appear as if this is like a dissociative. I never say baby, disassociation. You're not disassociating, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe that thing tripped me up real quick. So it doesn't appear like it's a dissociation or anything like that. It seems and appears to be genuine.
Yeah.
And so if that's where she is, again, meet her where she's at and not where she was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But moving on. I ain't therapizing y'all.
Right. Yes, you is.
Well, and just to say too, like I think we can even, because I shared with her a little while ago where God had revealed to me that I wasn't completely healed, and I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, it really made me like take a step back to see, okay, how? Because I feel like I am. I feel like I've been.
Mm-hmm.
But it was funny when he revealed it, like right around that time, the conversation kept coming up.
Yeah.
It came up with my husband. It came up with a couple of my friends. And I'm just like, why does everybody want to talk about this?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember just having this vulnerable conversation with my husband and just letting him know, like, in no way or form did I want him to feel like that I didn't want to validate the feelings that he had, because I understand why he feels the way he feels, because again, we have to be around the person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's different when they're out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely.
But if you have to be around the person, and it's different when it's family. And unfortunately, again, it's crazy to me how often it's a family member.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because don't they say it's usually the ones that are closest to you?
Yeah. Because
And
they have the access, the
yeah.
trust is there, and then that's when you get into that slippery slope, especially as a child, of well, if you tell your mom or dad, they're going to be upset with you, and you believe it because they're an adult or
Right.
they're the older person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why, like, just me as a mother of girls,
Yeah.
like I don't trust them with everyone.
Absolutely.
I'm not like, yeah, you could just go over such and such. Because I don't even want, I don't want nothing to happen.
Yeah.
And so I had one of my cousin's friends. We were having a conversation about how I'm protective, and she brought up the question because she has a little boy, and so she was like asking me the question like, "Are you just accusing people of being child molesters, or are you like why do you keep saying you don't want nobody to touch you?" And I'm like, well, first off, I'm not accusing anyone. I'm being cautious.
Right.
I'm being cautious because I have two little girls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they be messing with them. I said, I know.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but for the sake of my children,
and their mind,
right. Yeah. I'm cautious, and so no, they can't go over to sleepovers.
Mm-hmm.
No, they can't go over everyone's house. There's
Mm-hmm.
a very small 2 people, 3 maybe, that they can go over to their house, and I know that they'll be safe.
Yeah.
So I had to like explain that to her because I'm like, you just never you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. You even with her child, like it's like he's the only child, but you never know who he's around, what they're exposed to. So you just have to, as a parent, really discern,
Mm-hmm.
all of that thing. Know who your kids are around. Know who, if they're around someone, who are they around? If you're going over someone's house,
Absolutely.
It just because that's just something that I do. I don't want to happen, and I can't. That's my way of controlling the situation to make me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, going off of what you were saying, our next question on here, and just segue really good into it. How do you know when you are healed from that stuff?
So, and what's funny is so when you sent this, I really had to sit with it. And I actually was talking to my husband about this. I shared with you guys that my husband is an ER physician, right? And so when we're talking about the idea of healing, healing looks a lot of different things, especially when you're talking from that context. Right. And so I really sat with this. And so one of the things that I was thinking about, and go with me in this thought, because no one's ever really asked me this. And even in a therapeutic space, one of the things that I tell my clients is I am with you for a piece of your journey. And so I get you to a place where you can then operate, and then I let you go so that you can use the tools and all of those things.
Right.
So it's like I'm bandaging you so that you can then finish your healing journey. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I said to him, and he was like, I don't know if I agree or disagree with you. And so this is something that happened to me. So I worked at a deli in college, and I was making cookies. And I burned myself right here. So is it as apparent as it was? I mean, heck, I graduated in 2010, so I think I worked there in 2009. Mm-hmm. Is it that same mark? No. Can I still see it? Yes. Mm-hmm. So what came to mind for me is this is a part of your story. Mm-hmm. Now, what does full healing look like? It could be a sense of increased safety with your spouse. It can look like maybe improved self-esteem, a reduction in the sensitivity to the triggers, being able to talk about your experience, the forgiveness or acceptance piece of it, being able to engage in healthy relationships, right? But the mark is always there.
Yeah.
Right? And so just because you can see the mark doesn't mean that you're affected by it in the same way. So I think that there are degrees of healing, and there are seasons of our lives where, oh, wow, I feel like you just said.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about it. Anytime I see the person, anytime an act happens, it doesn't affect me at all.
Yeah.
And then there's times where it comes back around where maybe you are raising your children, and then you see something, and then the experience isn't necessarily happening to you, but you see how your child could have potentially been in something, and then it hits you in a different way.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're not healed.
Right. Well, it's you brought up a lot of good points, because it made me think about that time I was sharing with you guys when God revealed that to me, and I had a conversation with my husband. I started crying. I realized that, or I felt like he was saying, I was crying not necessarily because I had this, I don't even know how to explain it. Not because I felt this pain of I'm not, I'm still thinking about it or whatever. It was more so of because I felt like there was a scar. It was like I'm tired of this. I didn't want to be associated like a victim. I didn't want this thing to keep being, I recognize, like you said, it's a part of my journey. It happened. It was there. What was supposed to happened out of it. It's part of my story. I just want that to be it and over, but I still had to realize, and even, just hearing you talk, have to accept that, because it is part of my story. Mm-hmm. It can come up. And while I don't like the scar, it's still part of my story. Yeah. So that was really good point about just the stages, because it makes me think about another real good reason why I wanted us to have this discussion today is thinking about people who are going into marriage and needing to have that tough, deep, vulnerable conversation and realize where they're at before triggers happen. Like it'd be much better if the spouse knew ahead of time
Yeah.
what it is. So, and even for you to what's the word? Not take accountability. First acceptance so that you can get the help you need, at least the starting, like what you were talking about too. Like I'm sure it's a process. I'm sure it takes time, because I can tell you, like, that happened to me when I'm 10, 11, 12. And I remember going to a therapist more than once for this. I remember when my mom took me. I remember when I went when I got older, because she was like, I just want you to make sure, And so, but I remember when I went to that therapist, like, it was traumatizing. Like, I felt like she was bringing up stuff that I just remember leaving her feeling horrible. Like, I was in my car. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to talk to anybody. So, I could just look back and see these stages of how, it helped. And sometimes your spouse can be part of that story, and helping you to get through it and be supportive. But it's important to know who they are and if they can handle and if they can truly support it and know what they're dealing with,
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the things, right? Is so for like folks who are dating. So a couple of resources came to mind. My supervisor always talks about how I always have a book or something for everything. It's kind of how I live my life. So one of the books that me and my husband actually did, it's 101 questions to ask before you get engaged. Now we got engaged first, and we were still working on this book.
Yeah.
But it's very intricate and intentional about the types of questions that it asks, because people just think, oh, everything is going to work out. No.
Yeah.
It's not.
Right.
There are also programs like one of the services that I provide for, and I can use it for married couples too, but I use it primarily for folks who are engaged, is Prepare and Enrich. And then actually another resource that my church actually uses is called Alpha. And so they have a pre-marriage course, which is created for people who are dating or engaged. And it's a 5-week course in which you talk about like communication, conflict, sex, adventure, and all of those different things. And they have journals where you get down into the nitty gritty of these conversations, because it's necessary.
Yeah.
We want to have the sex, and we want to do all the things, and we want to experience all of the great things about marriage, which we should.
Right.
But we also have to remember that you are signing up to co-carry the bags of the other person.
Absolutely.
And yes, maybe they are fantastic and they're the man of your dreams, but if they don't know how to co-carry that luggage with you, are they really?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And I think, I know this is like one of the biggest reasons why me and Adrian created this organization, because we know that there are so many marriages that are failing or just not in a good spot because people weren't really prepared from the beginning, know what it looks like, know what to look for, know what to ask, know what to talk about. Like, my marriage counseling premarital counseling was so mediocre. I'm just like, when I look back, and I even got my little booklet still that we had, and I'm like, this mess.
Right.
No.
And you know what? It's no offense to churches, right?
Yeah.
And I think again, when we're talking about the shift that has happened and allowing Jesus and therapy to be a thing, right? I think the church has done the best that they can.
Yeah.
But also find you somebody who's licensed, right? Or partner with organizations or do something, because yes, we need the spiritual undergirding, but that is not all that we need.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we cannot pray our way through everything. Sometimes we need practical things, right? And some of the things we can do ourselves, and some of the things we need to seek clinical help for, in order for the person to be able to support the other person, in order for the person who is enduring this thing to navigate through, so that we can still be in covenant and walking through this thing together.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was just thinking, and I think you answered this question, but I was thinking for the person that is marrying or did marry um, the survivor, do you think that it would benefit them to also go through like sex counseling to help them get to those places to be able to be a good support for their spouse?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes therapy in general, but especially when we start to get into like sex therapies, the assumption is something has to be wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, that's therapy as a whole. When we go through different phases of life, so we talked about like having kids, or things can just be going great, and it's like the shift is, well, the things that used to really get me going is shifting a bit. Oop, come on, alarm! It's an emergency. This is important. So when we're talking about this idea of just trying to maintain, like that's also an important part, right? So when you're talking about, hey, I feel like I really am healed, like, can we still like, is sex therapy still a thing? Like, does it? Yes, it is. It's pertinent in any season of life. Because again, when we're talking about this idea of I feel healed, but something happened.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And again, this is my, as a clinician, this is how I operate. I'm not here to keep you forever.
Right.
But if just like we get maintenance on our cars or all of these different things, that's all that it is.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, you know, do you think they should have maintenance? But you just
Yeah, I don't subscribe to. You do not need to see me every week. We start off weekly and then we move to bi-weekly because I want to move you to termination.
Right.
Because you are more than capable. Now there are other clinical diagnoses and other things that necessitates that, but you know, that's a case by case basis.
Yeah. And to just to like sum up everything, if you can just kind of share in general, if we talk about sex therapy in general, what all does that usually entail? Like, I know, you know, it helps like with sex trauma if someone's had a traumatic experience and helping someone work through that, or their spouse, for instance, like Adrian was recommending. But I know there's therapy also to like goes into depth of like helping people with specific body parts and
baby or something.
Yeah. So can you kind of show us the depth of the inside of sex therapy?
Yeah. So my route that I chose is I'm also a sex coach. So finishing up certification as a clinical sexologist. So I combine all of these things. So for my practice specifically, we talk about the fun, we talk about the positions, we talk about and this is also how, again, you ain't about to say, Aleisha told me this is what I should do. No. In the words of one of my friends, do what you got the faith for, okay? All right, praise God. You do what you have the faith for. So we talk about like bedroom aids, whether that be toys, whether that be loot, like whatever the things, right? And so this is all a part of that. Yes, we can deal with the trauma because sometimes that does come up. But there are lighter hearted things. Okay, maybe I'm struggling with having the conversation about the desires or the new things that I want to try, and I just want to be able to have a buffer for us to be able to have this conversation. Things that I use there are like sex inventories that I use that can help kind of, y'all go in y'all separate corners, you fill this out, and then the only results that come back are the things that you guys are in alignment on. There are things like the Ultimate Intimacy app, which is actually a Christian-based app, so it has the diagrams, it has a great game that's inside of it. And so that's also a part of this equation. The fun, right? Or being adventurous and all of that type of stuff.
It's good. It's good to hear because I mean, we've said several times, and I know you've heard it several times, that a lot of times, especially if you're growing up in the church, all you're going to hear is don't have sex till you're married. Don't have sex till you're married.
And then the light switch supposed to flip and you
just go.
To flip
on. You're supposed to know how to twerk, turn,
Hello.
flip,
Hello.
all that.
Listen,
things.
And we don't.
No.
And then our partner looking at us and we looking at them.
Right.
Like,
What do you want me to do?
We're going to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes we need a little help, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And don't nobody just want to be having missionary sex all the time.
Right.
The Bible didn't say that.
I seen something the other day where somebody was like, don't shame anyone. If they have their one position and that's what they want to do, then just let them do it. Like,
yeah, but don't shame me for wanting to be flipped, rubbed down, hanging from the chandelier.
Right.
Praise God.
I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, yeah, that's cool, but you gonna
Don't
get
one position me.
eventually. You just doing it because it's safe.
Yep.
That's all.
But you know what? There are people, because if you know, again, what we're talking about in different seasons, right? If that thing working, it's gonna get you there, baby. Do
Right.
it.
Use it.
How and ever. Okay.
Right.
Just how it's different combinations on that video. My husband plays video games. It just has different combos and we can hit different stuff. Baby, combo me. Okay. Combo me.
Yes. We all need to explore. We all, you know, in the words of my Aunt Elena, and she's not my real auntie, but she my play auntie. But the first time I met her, we ended up having this good conversation, and she told me, she was like, if you want to keep your husband, let me tell you what you got to do. Have sex all the time. And I was just like, because I didn't expect her to come out of her mouth. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, no, you hear me? You hear me? We're not playing. And the next time she seen me, she told me again, are you doing what I told you? I'm telling you.
She's got wisdom.
Right.
She was like, connect in so many ways, and you have fun and this and that. But, you know, because we don't talk about it, because we're not comfortable about it, because we're not getting help, because we're really...
When the Bible was in Titus, it wasn't just talking about spirituality, older women that need to help the younger women.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Listen, I know we get uncomfortable, but if in the beginning he said it was all good and he created sex, that means sex is good.
That's right. That's
all okay.
Yep. Look, did y'all hear that for the people in the bike?
Did y'all hear that back there?
Right.
The people in the bike.
Yes.
Well, guys,
we're gonna have Miss Aleisha on again, and she's actually joining us for our first marriage retreat coming up in September.
I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
This will be our featured sex therapist, so we are so excited about that. And we're definitely gonna have her on again so we can dig more into this thing and talk more. We're gonna drop her information below so you can reach out to her for any of her services that she has available. And if you got any questions for her, comments about our conversation today, or more things you want to hear about and have us chat about, please put it below. Like, subscribe, all the things. Did you have anything else, Dree, that you want to add?
No, I'm taking it. I'm just taking it all in.
Yeah.
And this was good, you know, but like Adrian said, we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So many.
My scratch finger. We just scratched the surface, and I'm looking forward to what you have to teach us during the retreat. And
y'all gonna get me unfiltered.
Look,
I'm looking forward to it. Get ready. Get ready.
This was filtered, baby.
You know what? But at least you'll be unfiltered, and we'll be in the confines.
Yeah.
I could be unfiltered too. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
That's the way to do it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much again, Miss Aleisha, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go, don't forget. A good thing I hard to find.
But it takes work to keep it.
Yes, it does. Don't you forget it. We'll see y'all next week.
All right, y'all.